Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Beastmaster. So Beastmaster is an offlane hero, pretty much only played as an offlane hero. I mean, I think maybe occasionally it's been played mid or something, but it's really only an offlane hero. It's one of basically the two Zoo heroes, which are Beastmaster and Lycan. And Lycan used to be played as a carry like many years ago, and now that's an offlaner as well. So it's like Beastmaster and Lycan, the two Zoo heroes. They both buy Helm of the Overlord, Helm of the Dominator, and then Helm of the Overlord now. That they added that in the game a couple years ago. And this hero is all about the summons, all about the little creatures he has in his innate abilities, and then buying Helm of the Dominator. Back when Necrobook used to be a thing, which I don't know if they'll ever bring that back, but there is in a neutral item, like at the last tier or whatever, but he used to buy that as well. It's all about the little creatures that you use to help yourself push towers, do chaos in fights, and all that kind of stuff. And the main way you can think about this hero is he's very dynamic. He has different ways to play in the lane, depending on how good his different abilities are. He's also very good at farming, very good at clearing stacks, very good at pushing. He has a single target stun that goes through BKB. He has a little bit of everything. He has a stun that's like flying around him now. He used to be a lot about vision and push and map control. Now he's kind of just like this snowball force that he like attacks super fast. He stuns you. He does every little thing that you would want almost in the game. He does a little bit of everything. Spam spells, slows. And so he's just this force, this ball that just kind of, especially in the mid game, if you can have a good lane, if you can take over the map, if you can get your team to group up, it's very, very difficult to deal with this hero because he can farm pretty quickly, and then he's extremely tanky, really good spells in every single case, and it's very hard to deal with him until you get later in the game. Once you get later in the game, like if you let the game go too late with this hero, then he can kind of fall off, because then he becomes just like an ultimate bot. Like he just uses his ultimate. He's just a bot that presses R, and that's all he does, and he just stuns you. And yes, he stuns you through BKB, but that's kind of all that he does. If you're not taking advantage of his laning stage, if you're not taking advantage of his early game timings, farming extremely quickly, taking over the map, pressuring heroes, pressuring towers, potentially even taking tier 2s before like 15 minutes. If you're not doing all these things and being very dynamic and aggressive on the hero and playing around your team and getting supports to play with you, getting the mid to play with you, it can feel kind of underwhelming. It feels like there are other heroes that are going to do, the late game job or any specific one job a little bit better than him. So you need to make sure that you're taking advantage of all those different aspects. And that's why this hero can kind of be a hero that you never see in low MMRs. Like anything below Immortal, you don't see it that often. And then even in Immortal, you don't see it a ton. You still see it a lot, but it's maybe still even more popular in like, the pro meta, because sometimes you'll see Beastmaster and Lycan being picked in pro games, and you'll still not even really see it that much in pubs, even high-level pubs. So that's why this is mostly a pro hero, but it can still be, it's just because it has such a high skill cap. It's kind of similar to Morphling in that sense that, like, even when Morphling was broken a couple months ago, I feel like I didn't see a ton of that hero, even at my MMR. I feel like lower MMRs, you don't see a ton of it because it's just a high skill cap hero. You still have to be very good at it, and that's the same thing with Beastmaster. Even if it's broken and it's very good, you don't see it a ton because a lot of people don't play it and it can be complicated. But I'm going to show you all the basics, and then you can kind of get into the hero, know the basics, and then you're going to build on it from there, watching replays of pro players. And if you are very good at the hero, you can just absolutely dominate games. If you're able to micro really well, if you're able to use all of his strengths and just push him to the limit, you can just take over games, destroy lanes, destroy the entire map, and just snowball the game to the point that the enemy can't even come back and they can't even get to that late game portion, that late game timing where he just ends up falling off a little bit. So that's Beastmaster. That's how to think of him in general. Now let's jump in and take a look at his abilities. So now that we understand Beastmaster in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to be that good all-around hero that can just snowball lanes, snowball the game, and has a little bit of everything to give in his kit. So first we're going to take a look at Wild Axes. So Wild Axes is a pretty straightforward ability in that it's really not like hard to cast or anything. You just kind of, it has a very long AoE, but you just kind of cast it in a direction, and he throws out these two axes, and then they kind of like come out and they come back to you like a boomerang kind of thing, and they do damage on the path. So you can see if you throw them like close, they can go close. If you throw them really far, they go really far. So it does matter kind of where you click. It's not like they just go all the way out. So if I click on the axe here, the two axes come and they hit him. So that is important to know. It's also like if I throw them out here, they still hit the axe in the direction when they come in and out. So it's not like you're really going to dodge it by like standing in the middle or anything like that. So it is important to remember that. but it doesn't matter where you click, even if they do have long range. And they do have a travel time, so it can be sometimes a little bit of a skill shot to hit this, but not a ton. Now, it does have a pretty low cooldown, and the other thing that it does is it doesn't just do damage. It also creates a stack. So right now you can see, let's refresh this guy. If I throw these here and it hits him, he has 2 stacks. And then if I throw them again, he gets more stacks, and basically just it increases damage. Now, the stacks don't last forever, but they last a pretty long time. So the more I throw these, the more stacks he's going to take, and then the more damage he's going to take. And this is good not only for harassing in the lane, because in the past you would see people really not take wild axes until a little bit later in the game. And now this is honestly probably the most popular build once they added the stacking mechanism where you can just spam these in lane. It's very, very annoying to deal with. You have to kind of like retreat from the lane if you're the carry or the support, because you don't want to have these stacks build up almost like a bat rider, because then you're just going to take insane damage. It also allows you to farm not just waves, but like ancient stacks. So one of the things with this hero is you can send your little creep that you spawn, your boar, which I'll talk about in a second. You can have him stack the ancients for you. You can go stack the ancients for yourself or have your support do it. You can clear multiple ancient stacks by just spamming these axes. So it's really good for that. Scaling damage over time early on in the game. Obviously, later in the game, it kind of falls off. You're not going to be sitting there spamming axes, but it is still very good. I mean, you can chop down trees, all that kind of stuff. There's some utility to it as well. So that's the axes. And next, we're going to take a look at Call of the Wild. So this is kind of one skill that has 2 abilities. And basically, this is your little creep summon ability. So you can click this, and you summon a boar. And you can have 2 at a time, so I have a free spell on right now, but every time I summon, actually I guess it doesn't work with, it doesn't just like kill the boar, so now I have 4, but really with the way it works with the cooldown, you can really only have 2 boars at a time, because summon duration is 60, cooldown is 30, so like, that's just basically how it works. Now, yeah, there might be ways that you could get more than 2 boars, but it doesn't really happen, you don't really have to think about that, but basically the boars, are really good because they're just boars. They just attack, but the other big thing they do is they slow a lot. So like if you see Axe's movement speed here is slowed by a ton, it's very, very difficult for him to get away from the boar. And so in the laning stage, this is good just not only for last hitting, which is good, but it's good for like chasing down the support, harassing the enemy carry. And then if you ever are pursuing someone, like the creeps are near your tower, you can use your boars to just chase people down and chase after them forever, because it's very difficult to get away. And early on, I mean, this axe is pretty high level. Early on, if you max this out, they do significant damage. Like the damage that they do, it can't be underestimated, especially against supports, which are generally lower level than the carry, obviously, or squishy carries that aren't melee and that kind of stuff. You can really abuse these boars. And that's the other thing, too, is because of the way the cooldown works, you have to be kind of careful that you're not just feeding the boars away, because, Treants from Nature's Prophet, even Eidolons from Enigma, they're important not to feed, but they're not as big of a deal. Or even like an illusion-based hero like a Naga Siren. You can just spawn illusions and just send them at the enemy. It's not really a big deal. This, you cannot do that, because you only spawn one every 30 seconds if you're going to be using it. You don't just want to have it run in and let them kill it, because it's not going to die super fast, but it does die fast enough that you can't just not be ignoring it. You have to treat it like it's a hero. So that's why this micro can get kind of complicated, because if you have 2 of these spawned plus yourself, you can, there's a lot of things to consider, and it can take a lot of skill with the micro here, and that's why this can be a very difficult high skill cap hero. Then we have Call of the Wild Hawk. Now, this used to be something different. They just recently changed it, and it's actually become kind of broken. In the past, I'll just briefly tell you about what it used to be, because if they change it back for whatever reason, you can just reference this. But all you used to do with this is you just kind of click the hawk in an area, and it would send a hawk there, and they would eventually be invisible, and they would just kind of sit there and give you vision. It was very good for controlling vision on the map and like ganking people, and it was a very, very good ability, but it was just kind of boring. I mean, you didn't really control it very much. You used to be able, I think, in the past to actually control it and make it move around, but recently it was just kind of, you sit it on a spot and it just sits there like a ward. And having a free ward is like very good, but again, it's boring. So they changed it now, so when this hawk that you can click, and you spawn a hawk, and it just like circles around you, and then every so often it just dive bombs the enemy in like this AoE, and it dive bombs like the enemy like once per rotation or whatever, and it just stuns them for a little bit and does some damage. It's extremely annoying. It just makes this hero even more aggressive. It doesn't do the insane map control that it used to have. But it just gives this hero an extra, you're spamming axes, you're slowing them down, you're doing extra damage with boars. Now you have this hawk flying around you and just like dive bombing them every couple seconds and they're just getting stunned and they just can't run away. It's very, very annoying to deal with this hero. It just makes him even more of a snowball hero. And then he also has a passive, which just basically gives attack speed. Gives attack speed to himself, gives attack speed to his allies, and it gives attack speed to all of his minions that he has. So he has, obviously, the boars. I believe the attack speed scales with Call of the Wild Hawk. Attack rate increases with the Hawk's attack speed. Exactly. So that just makes him fly around more and stun more. If you get more attack speed items like an AC, that helps because it helps all of your summons and everything. And then you're buying also Helm of the Overlord, Helm of the Dominator, then Helm of the Overlord. So you have this creep running around, then an ancient creep, and you're just doing a lot of damage or attacking super fast, all this kind of stuff. It just, you can see how it snowballs out of control and synergizing with all these little things that you do. That's very, very hard to deal with, especially early on. And then lastly, Primal Roar is just kind of like the icing on top. It is very good. It is kind of one of the things that defines the hero outside of all of the summons that he has. Like, this is all synergistic together. And then he has this ultimate that is like really good to just top it all off. And what you do with this is it's actually very simple and straightforward. You just click on an enemy, you yell at them, and they get stunned through BKB, and then I'll just actually spawn another enemy axe to show you what happens if there's like an enemy nearby. So I'll roar this one, and then the other enemy axe kind of gets pseudo-stunned as well, like pushed back, almost like a Queen of Pain ultimate. It's just they can like pop abilities and do things like that, but they do get like kind of pushed back, so that you're kind of isolating the target as well. And so this has a relatively low cooldown. If you buy something like Octarine, you can kind of spam this a lot. Like, you'll have it up in every single fight. So it is very good in that way. And things that pierce BKB can kind of never be counted out. But again, if you're not snowballing the game with all the other stuff, and you're not very good at like keeping the boars alive and all this kind of stuff, then you end up just becoming this Primal Roar thing, which honestly, if all you're doing is stunning through BKB, it'd be better just to pick Axe, because the hero's tanky, he's very simple, he's straightforward, not that hard to play. This guy, yes, very, very good, but also pretty complicated. So I'm not really going to talk about the Ags or the Shard. You know, they're good, don't get me wrong, but they don't really add like crazy dimension to the hero, and they might get changed at any moment because they did just recently change the hero. So that is Beastmaster. Those are his abilities. Now let's jump into a game and see how he's played. So now I'm actually jumping into a game here of 33 playing Beastmaster, and actually just showing you that he fed First Blood. But I'm going to do a little bit different, something a little bit different for this replay than usual. I'm just going to put it on 2x speed, and we're just going to watch the whole game, because the game is only like 20 minutes long. Now, I will say that the Ember does also destroy in this game, but that's not just because the Ember is good and the enemy's like really bad. That's also just because 33 is so good. He's probably the best, one of the best offlaners in general, and probably like the best zoo hero offlaner, like the best summons offlaner in the world right now. And so it's a lot to do. Like, they win this game a lot of basically because of him and his aggression. So you can see this hero with just 1 point in axes, level 1, is extremely, extremely hard to deal with. And then once he gets level 2, especially with the Hawk, it's just like ridiculous. He ends up diving the tower there, but he gets a double kill. That's pretty worth it, honestly. You can see you just cannot fight into this hero, and this is when the hero is at his weakest, is the first like couple levels, because you know, level 1 axes, it's not that good. He's still spamming it, giving you a lot of stick charges. Level 1 boar and Hawk, not the best. So just, you know, he's already getting aggressive. He already has 2 deaths, but a kill and an assist. And then just from here, it just gets worse for the enemy. Like, every level, every creep, it just gets way worse. He ends up getting his Helm of Iron Will, which gives him 10 armor total, which is kind of insane. So then it's even harder for like a PA and stuff to jump in on him. It gives him regen 2 to really good against Jakiro, so it is a decent matchup. But there really aren't that many matchups that Beastmaster is bad into. Honestly, the only thing that counters him is like stick. It's just like he's spamming axes at you, so you get stick charges, but it's still not enough. You can see they kind of dive him 2v1. The Prophet doesn't even come in until later, and I think he gets a double kill here. They don't actually end up getting the kill on the Jakiro, but still, they end up jumping in on him, and he has so much armor, and he has so much damage that they can't even do anything. And this is just basically how you play this hero overall. In the laning stage, it's just, in the beginning, you can get aggressive, but you know, might want to wait till you have some levels to be extremely aggressive, because the more levels you get in this hero, the more damage he does, the harder he is to fight into. You also need to make sure you have a good support that is playing around you at times. So you don't want to like feed kills unless your support is being aggressive. But you can see the only time he actually fed a kill was when he was getting like double kills. So it's not like he fed obviously first blood, but so really he's like 2-1-1 if we really consider what he's doing in the laning stage. Otherwise, you're focusing on farming, and you see because he's so. I mean, obviously, Prophet is a very good support, and he's able to be around the map. But a normal forward position could do the same thing, like any other forward position. And because he's so good with his hero, just in general, he's good at micro. He understands the concept of the hero. Because he's just so good at this hero, and this hero can be so aggressive, it's so hard for the enemy to fight in that the Prophet can just leave the lane. And you can see the PA was under tower, trying to farm, and he's just chasing him down with the Hawk, stunning him, and the throwing axes, and just nothing he could do. The PA was literally under the tower, pushed, or pulled the small camp so that the tower could tank the creeps, so that the creeps would come in so we could farm it. And because Prophet was on the other side of the map, causing chaos, and then the Jakiro had to go help, there was just nothing the PA could do. It was just like, he's standing under his tower at 5-6 minutes of the game, and 1v1 he just gets dove, and there's nothing he can, like, it's not even close. Like, he just gets absolutely annihilated. And yeah, he tried to run away outside the tower, but if he just stood there, he just would have gotten axed down with the Hawk just destroying him. So you can see he already has his Helm of the Dominator. I believe if you saw before, let me just go look real quick. I think he already stacked this. Maybe he didn't yet, but while I was talking. But he is going to use his board to stack, so he's getting a lot of last hits. You can see 8 minutes in, he already has 53 last hits. It's impossible for them to go on him. In fact, with the Ember there, that it's like Storm is already low mana in like 2 seconds. I believe Storm actually ends up dying. Yeah, Storm ends up dying there. Because the Ember, again, the Ember is destroying, but the Ember's destroying because this Beastmaster has dominated his lane largely 1v2. After like the first 3 minutes, Prophet just like left and never came back. And then for the next like, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, you can see how he kind of dominated the lane. Is very aggressive, hard to fight into. Now the thing about this is, what you're not seeing in this game is that the enemy is smart enough to know that he's so strong that they can't fight into him, so they're just ignoring. But a lot of times, if you were good, like if he played in a lower MMR, let's say, with the same hero, here we go, he's stacking the Ancients and the big camp to clear later. But you could see that if he was in a lower MMR, they would stand around and still like go back to the lane for the 10 minutes, and he would just like probably have like 10 kills or more by now. And that's what you could do in your games if you just like watch what he does, do the same kind of stuff, and just get aggressive, and the enemy team will make way more mistakes. But, and especially if your support stays, but this is the whole thing, is you allow your support to just leave. If you have like an Earthshaker or Nature's Prophet, something like that, they've basically just been able to, this whole time, while he's farming, he has 78 last hits. Now he's going to clear these stacks. It's just insane how much farm he's able to get. Let's just see how many last hits he has at like 11 to 12 minutes after he clears all this stuff. It's just ridiculous. He's about to have like 100 last hits, and like with 3 Ancient Camp stacks at like 11 and a half minutes, dude. That's ridiculous. Yeah, 100 last hits. That's crazy, man. So let's go to net worth here. Yeah, he has almost 7k net worth at like 12 minutes. 7k net worth at 12 minutes. Absolutely ridiculous amount of net worth. This is what this hero can do. And then you can see, like, if you just watch the map, like, the other 4 heroes on the team have just played around here, like, the entire game. Yeah, Ember did come bot. They have come bot, like, a couple times. But otherwise, they just know, the enemy team knows they cannot do anything to this guy. And he's just bot by himself, farming stacks. And just, like, the Beastmaster's controlling, essentially, this entire part of the map by himself. Because they have to bring basically 5 to just deal with him, and even then, they probably can't deal with him. Now, I think you'll see here, he kind of runs super aggressive, and I think they end up bringing 5 and killing him, but I think it costs the enemy, like, everything just to kill him. Like, they have to use all the ults, they go into the storm, he still almost lives, and I think it costs them a lot. Like, I think they end up dying on a bunch of heroes here. But that's the thing, like, so you can go in on him. You're not invulnerable. Like, you can still die to a lot of heroes, of course. Don't get me wrong. But you can just be so aggressive that they have to bring everybody. And if they do bring everybody, then your allies are farming and you're making a ton of space for your carry and your mid. And so this is just the perfect example of a great game to showcase how strong this hero is and how, like, yes, the Ember's doing really well, but the Ember's doing really well basically because the Beastmaster is doing so well. Because if the Beastmaster had to have the Nature's in his lane the whole time, and, you know, then let's say the PA could free farm, and Nature's had to stay there to help him because let's say it was another hero he wasn't as good at the Beastmaster, you know, he wasn't good in general, and then it was able to be Jakiro and Storm versus Ember. Maybe the matchup would be different. Maybe the Storm would be dominating the Ember. Like, it's not just 100% that the Ember is going to destroy the Storm. I mean, he's probably a better player too, but I'm just saying, the Beastmaster is taking control of this game. And then they're pushing a tier 2 tower at 15 minutes. Like, with almost 10k net worth and Helm of the Overlord, what are you going to do? What is the enemy going to do? Like, they all in to try to kill him, and he still doesn't die. I mean, yes, there's an IO with regen and stuff, but look at this. They're pushing the base at 16 minutes, and these are immortal players. Like, no one's AFKing in Fountain. No one's, like, trolling the game. There's no one feeding down mid. This is just, like, what Beastmaster can do. This is how he works. So, if you are able to be really good at the hero, practice the hero, and play this hero really well, you can do this kind of, like, on your own, regardless of what game you're in, like even if you're low MMR. Now, obviously, it takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of practice. You have to know the limits. You have to push the limits. You have to know, you know, how aggressive you can be without dying, because if you feed, that's really bad. If you feed your boards, that's really bad. If you feed your Helm of the Dominator or Overlord, that's really bad. So that's the thing. It's not something you're just going to learn in 2 seconds. I can't just, like, show you a replay and say, hey, look, play like this, because it's all about understanding the hero and the limits and just playing, you know, hundreds of games on that hero and that kind of thing. But if you're able to do this, if you're able to learn how to do this and copy the pros and kind of just emulate their style, especially 33, he's so good at this hero, you can definitely do this in your game. And the only difference would be in lower MMRs is that instead of being 7, 3, and 10, you'll be like 21 and 10 or something like that, because the enemy will just run into you and feed if you push your limits at the right spot and don't get way too aggressive when you shouldn't be and that kind of stuff. But if they just, like, run into you early in the game instead of ignoring you like this team did, you'll just be able to destroy them. You know, throw the axes, slow them down, use your Helm of the Overlord, and then do insane damage, and, you know, roar them if they get out of position, because the roar just destroys any hero that early. And now we can see 20 minutes in the game's just over, and this is the Beastmaster effect. Now, obviously, like I said, Ember did really well. Nature's Prophet's also very good right now in general, but this is the Beastmaster effect. And so that's Beastmaster. That is my guide for Beastmaster. And again, this is a very complicated hero, so I'm not going to be able to give you all the shortcuts now. It's kind of one of those things just displaying to you, showing you how good it could be if you were able to master the hero. And so that's my Beastmaster guide. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.